And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
To boldly go where no man has gone before. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're taking a look at Star Trek Catan. A lot of you probably picked this up at Target because that's where you find Star Trek Catan. And if you've never played a Catan game before, then I'm going to explain to you and show you. This is very similar to a game called Settlers of Catan, which I have right here. There are some differences to it, so we'll talk about those also. So let's take a look at this game. If you are someone who likes Settlers of Catan, then there's really not a huge amount of differences in here, and I'll point them out. But if you've never played Settlers of Catan before, then this is a great starting point to jump in. At the beginning of the game, you make a random board. Actually, the beginner's rules has a board that you can make, so it shows you exactly how to make the board. But this board has a frame that is made up of different hexagons that are put on here. Each of these hexagons is a different type of planet and produces a different resource. Blue planets produce water, white ones produce oxygen, which leads to the humorous phrase during the game where people say, "I need oxygen." Anyway, the yellow ones produce food, the red ones produce tritanium, and the green ones produce dilithium. Now, and the asteroid produces nothing. At the beginning of the game, each player, they have a whole bunch of their pieces. They have outposts, they have starships, and they have star bases. Your outpost, which is equivalent to the settlement in the original game, you'll be placing those either in the beginning game, it tells you where to place them, or you'll place them in an intersection between 2 or 3 of the planets, and you'll place one of your spaceships on the line between those planets. And so each player will be placing those at a different spot, and you're going to put down 2 of each. And now, players are also going to get a card from these different character cards. These cards give you a special ability, and we'll talk about those special abilities in a bit. Now, each of the planets out here has a number on it, and that's kind of a probability number. 2 dice are rolled over the course of this game. At the beginning of your turn, you're going to roll 2 dice. You will look at the number that's rolled in those dice. In this case, it's an 11. So every 11 on the board produces. Over here, this 11 produces. Does anyone have something next to that? Well, yes, this white one that I hadn't put on the board until now is next to it. So that white one is going to get 1 tritanium because it's next to it. If I roll a different number, let's see what I roll now. I roll 5. This 5 here is going to produce 1 tritanium for this blue star base because there's a blue star base next to it. If there are multiple star bases, let's say later on in the game blue gets another star base right there, and it would now get 2 from that spot. So the more star bases you have on the board, the more you're going to get. And you'll notice that the red numbers are the numbers that are rolled the most, 6 and 8s. But wait, you say, what about 7? Well, anytime a 7 is rolled, which happens a lot, you get to move the Klingon freighter, and he gets to fly around the board, and you can land him anywhere you want. That number is now canceled until he moves again. And if you land him next to somebody else's base, you can steal a card randomly from their hand. Now, you're collecting these cards, and you got to be careful because if you have more than 7 cards and someone rolls a 7, you will lose half of them. But the reason you're collecting them is you are trying to build new things. You have a building card, and this building card tells you what you need to build something. To build another starship, you need a green and red. To build another outpost, green, red, yellow, white. To build a starbase, white, white, blue, blue, blue. To buy a development card, yellow, white, and blue. When you're building starships, they simply have to go next to one of your bases or next to another starship. So you kind of are making a line of starships. If you ever make 5 or more starships, you will take this card, which is the largest Starfleet. It's worth 2 victory points, and you will keep it until someone makes a longer line of starships. So there's that. And that's actually, you'll get the longest supply route, not the longest Starfleet. The longest supply route goes to the person who has the longest row of starships. Now, as the game progresses, you will also be building other outposts. Building outposts are important because each outpost you build is worth a victory point. Not to mention, they have these. Now, at the beginning of the game, you will put 2 of these outposts in reserve. You don't get 2 of them to start with. But if you ever upgrade one of your outposts into a starbase, So you take this and put it on the top, and now the outpost no longer looks as dorky. It looks pretty cool now, turning into a full-fledged star base. The star base is great for 2 reasons. One, it's worth 2 victory points. Actually, 3 reasons. 2, it lets you get one of your reserve outposts back into your hand. And 3, when a number is rolled next to a star base, you will get 2 of that resource rather than 1. You're allowed to trade with other players in this game. Of course, you can trade on your turn. If you have no other player to trade with, you can trade to the bank, 4 for 1. Or if you're next to one of these here, you can see this is a dilithium trading thing. So if you have an outpost next to this here, you can trade 2 green for 1 of anything. And here, if you're next to that one, you can trade 3 for anything, and you can trade 2 blues for anything. So there's always that option. But your best option will always be other players if possible. When you're building bases, you have to build them 2 away from any other base. You can't build them right next to each other, and they have to be built on next to one of your starships. So you need to build more starships before you can build more outposts and then upgrade them to star bases. The last thing you can buy on your thing you saw was a development card, and you just draw the top card from this deck and keep it in your hand. Most of the cards in this deck either allow you to do something that will give you more resources. A few of them are worth victory points that you can keep until the end of the game, but the vast majority of them are Starfleet intervenes. When it's your turn, you can play one of these cards. That lets you move the Klingon to another spot and steal a card from somebody. And once you have 3 of these Starfleet cards in front of you, you leave them in front of you when you play them. That's when you get the largest Starfleet. And this is taken from you if someone else builds more. So, how do you get points? Well, you get points from, there's some victory point cards. Each outpost is worth a point. Each star base is worth 2. And each of those largest and longest things are worth 2 points each. When someone gets to 10 points, the game is over. They announce that. It might be obvious or it might not be because of cards they have. Now, each player has one of these to start the game with. Each of these characters gives you a special ability. When you use that special ability, you have 2 options. You can turn it in, and on the side there will be all the characters no one else has used, and take one of those characters. Or you can turn it over to the B side, in which case the next time you use it, you have to turn it in and get a new character card. I won't go over what all the character cards will do, but I'll give you a few of them. Chekhov here can force the Klingon ship to go back to the asteroid field, and he gets a resource for kicking it out. Janice Rand here lets you do 1 trade for 2 to 1, like you have that base next to you. Montgomery Scott lets you, when you're building a starship, you can replace one of the things as a wild. Sulu allows you to move one of your starships from its spot to another spot on the board. And so there's different people, many of the famous different characters in the game, and they all have very good abilities. I mean, these abilities are things that are not included in the Settlers of Catan, but they allow you to do special activities. And this is the biggest change between this and the original game. As I said, each player starts with 1, but you always will have 1, because if you use 1, you get another 1. And once again, the first person to get a certain amount of points is the winner. Let's talk about theme first. This is Star Trek. Okay, the pieces are fantastic. They look like little Federation ships, little Enterprises all over the board. The characters are good. The artwork is great. But I mean, if you're looking for a Star Trek game, this is not what you're looking for. Don't get me wrong. This is a Star Trek theming of the game, just like if you played Star Trek Monopoly. And that does not inherently make this bad, because, in fact, Settlers of Catan is a great game. So putting Star Trek on it is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're looking for the Star Trek experience, then there are other games out there, Star Trek Expeditions and other games. You can find them. But let's take a look at this in the concept as a game. To those Catan enthusiasts out there who like Catan, you say, well, what is the difference between this and Settlers of Catan? Well, essentially nothing at first. When you play the game, it's a straight up game, and I'm sure maybe there's minor differences that I'm not seeing, but it has the exact same feel to it. Once you add the character cards and the special powers of the characters, that changes it, but it doesn't change it dramatically. Now, one of the big things about this game is that you're not gonna, I doubt they're gonna make Seafarers of Star Trek Catan and Cities and Knights of Star Trek Catan, or whatever the equivalent would be in the Federation or Vulcan Empires. I don't see, there's no expandability here, but since most people play Settlers of Catan with just a straight up vanilla, we call it vanilla Settlers anyway, this is a good way with a minor variant in it, and so that makes it fun. With all that being said, let's look at this as a standalone game. If you know someone who likes Star Trek, this is great because this is the same, like I said earlier, like giving someone Star Wars Monopoly or giving them the Muppets Trivia. It's a theme that they like. Now, what you are hoping they do is will actually crack the shrink on it, because they say over 60% of Monopoly games are never even opened, because inside this isn't a game that is as, well, let's say maybe mediocre as Monopoly. I hesitate to call it bad, but this is an excellent game. This is one that I enjoyed, and it looks really cool. Card quality for the resources could have been better, I suppose, but that's made up for those really neat ships that are flying all around the board. Really cool. So, as it is, who's going to like this? Well, everyone. Go out. Buy one. Seriously. And when you're buying people gifts for Christmas, if they like Star Trek at all, get this for them. This is an excellent game. Settlers of Catan has always been a good game, and having Star Trek Catan in the mix is something I think is a good idea. I would like to see this become the next Monopoly. Here's a good start.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.